Hello out there. Thank you for joining me again today. I wanted to talk about the idea of affirmations and the first time I experienced the power that lies therein. There most certainly is power in the tongue. What we speak matters greatly and has the ability to shape our reality more than we realize. I want to lead this lesson with an experience that I will never forget. I was fighting terribly at the time with my ex late one night while I was placing my bags in the car as I prepared to leave for the airport. I ended the shouting in the driveway as I got into my car and then drove off to catch my flight. Now, this was a red eye flight, so it was very dark and quiet on the roads. As I parked and exited my vehicle at the airport, my in law called. This is the in law that I was about to visit, and they wanted to speak to me about what was happening. Apparently, my ex had called to let them know we were having issues. It was my plan to discuss my troubles in person, but I found myself crying as I explained my strife to them over the phone. Near the end of the call, I had just joined the very long TSA line. It was then that they informed me that it would not be best that I come and visit. While I felt completely devastated because I was already upset, I understood why they did it. They did not want to be involved in the drama, nor be in the middle of the severe bickering we were having back and forth. Now, when I hung up, I stood in defeat as my heart sank and I thought about what to do next. I remember looking at everyone around me preparing to go through the line, and then turning around to leave with tears flowing down my face as I held my head low. I certainly didn't want to go back home, as this would have ignited a larger fight, and I knew that our daughter was asleep and had school the next morning. I slowly walked back to my car and started it up, not knowing what to do next. I exited the parking lot and made my way back onto the highway. Now, by this time, it was around 3:30 a.m., and I was driving in my general direction back to town. I was unsure of where I was going to park and sleep for the night. Besides my sobs, it was silent. It was very dark on the roads as well as very dark on the inside of my vehicle, as there weren't any other cars driving at that time of night to which headlights would have occasionally lit up my interior. It was then that I could feel multiple presences in the car. I was physically alone, but it felt as if I had a full cargo of people with me. It was at this time that I began to hear in my mind, "This is a blessing, this is a blessing, this is a blessing," over and over again. So much so that I began to repeat this to myself out loud. It was as if I had a song lyric in my mind that I began to sing. You know, when you get something stuck in your head and you're just forced to say it out loud because it's on repeat in your mind. Now, the confusing part was that I, in fact, did not agree with this notion, nor did I feel like this was a blessing. What was happening was terrible, and I hated every second of it. This thought was counter to what I was feeling inside, which was hopeless, powerless, and afraid. I was thinking I had no escape and had to return to the one place that brought me dread. Now, this wasn't an isolated fight. We had been fighting, I don't know, I want to say a year straight at this point. They had just become more frequent and more intense. So I definitely didn't want to go home, and I definitely didn't think this was a blessing. Yet and still, I repeated, "This is a blessing, this is a blessing, this is a blessing," like a broken record. It became my own personal mantra in that moment for some reason. I had no idea why. It was as if my thoughts were hijacked. HIGH, hijacked, by some annoying, optimistic friend who seems to effortlessly find that silver lining to all of your troubles. I could not see the path before me, but this higher thought and higher way of being proved to be transformative. That early morning, I decided to sleep in my car in front of my local gym, and then I came home after he had went to work. By this time, it wasn't uncommon that I would sleep in my car to avoid fights, whether it was in front of my property or at work before I had to go in for my shift. Now, he had to work a full 24-hour shift, so I at least had a day of peace, and I made sure to come home after he went to work. I knew that I wanted to move out, and so I needed more money. I managed to pick up a few hours that morning since I had the time off for my canceled trip. I wanted to avoid the confrontation at all costs, even if that meant working all day long in case he decided to pop in from work. My plan was to somehow leave and get an apartment of my own. Now, while at work, I told my coworker what happened, and she suggested that I borrow money from my retirement so that I could actually have money immediately to get a place. I dismissed her advice because I thought it was an impossibility. I honestly thought I had to get a second job and work tirelessly to save up in order to move. At that time, I worked at a call center, so I managed to continue to pick up hours as the day went on, since no one liked to work on Sundays. Later that afternoon, another good friend of mine came in for her evening shift. I briefed her on why I wasn't out of the office and on my actual trip, but at work instead, and she too mentioned that I should borrow money from my retirement to leave. Instead of dismissing her, I actually opened up and explained that I could not because I had already done so a couple years prior. So for me, it wasn't possible. She then said we can borrow from my retirement more than once. This was information I was not privy to. I almost leapt out of my chair with absolute shock and joy. You see, in my mind, this was an impossibility, so I was reluctant to see the solution, even when it was presented to me the first time. I checked, and sure enough, I had more than enough to not only leave, but to do it comfortably. This was the blessing that was spoken into being. The very next day, I found a community and applied for an apartment. And the funny thing is that this place that I happened to stumble upon before even looking at the first place on my list, I didn't know existed. It happened to be a new construction. I was approved before the week ended and also had my check in my account from my retirement. That following Monday, my daughter and I were able to move into the new apartment. The affirmation was the hijacking of my entire psyche, and this transformed my situation very quickly. I learned that the outcomes that we think we know of are only but a tiny drop in the ocean of possibilities that are available to us. My pain and hopelessness turned into ease and actualized blessings in 1 week's time. That night when I was turned away at the airport was indeed a blessing. Staying home, conferring with my coworkers, and having my living situation turn around for me was exactly what was needed to happen for me to get relief from my immediate troubles. We are not ever alone, I learned, and the opportunities that lie ahead of us are more than what we can even imagine. My situation did feel awful while in the middle of experiencing it, but knowing that it was ultimately a blessing by affirming it over and over again is what transformed my life entirely. Now, in hindsight, it was an even greater blessing because my move-in date was March 2nd, 2020. Within the next couple of weeks, COVID-19 hit our state in full force and everyone had to shelter in place. I could not imagine a more perfect outcome than what I had at that time. Thank you so much for listening. Tune in next week for episode 3, where I discuss hearing my higher mind's voice for the first time. Talk to you later. Bye.